We continue now at the top of Daf Kuf Zayin Amud Aleph and Meseches Bava Basra. This is Bava Basra Daf 107a. And the previous Amud Shmuel said that if two brothers are dividing property and then a third brother shows up, so we say Mekamtzin, we say that each brother gives a certain portion of his share to that third brother so that everybody has a third, but that original division, it does stand. They don't have to start over the entire division. And the Gemara asked on Shmuel that we find in a situation of a sale, let's say a person is selling a core for 30, so the sale is not finalized until the buyer takes the entire core. So why is it over there that we say the sale is not finalized, but by the division of property, we say the division is considered finalized? And the Gemara now answers, Hassam over there, Avod Rabbanan Milsa Denichalei Lamocher Venichalei Lokeach. By the case of the sale, so we say the Rabbanan, they institute something that is good for both the seller and the buyer. And the Rashbam explains, Umashani Hasam Gabe Mekachu Memkar, when you're talking about buying and selling, Avod Rabbanan Milsa, Kolomar, what the Gemara means to say is as follows. Lekach Tiknu V'yomru Chachamim, for the following reason, the Chachamim said, Sheyuchal Lachzor At Sheyimshoch Kol Mecho, that the buyer and the seller are able to retract until the buyer takes everything. The Basra Das Halokeach Vehamocher Azli Rabbanan, because the Rabbanan, when they were instituting this policy, they were following the intentions of both the buyer and the seller, meaning they were doing something that was advantageous for both the buyer and the seller. This is good for both of them. The buyer, it's good for him. He wants to be able to retract in case this goes down in value. He wants to be able to go back on the purchase. And the same thing is true for the seller. Let's say it goes up in value. In the meantime, he'll be able to retract as well. Therefore, it was all done with this understanding. The seller was selling and the buyer was buying. That they can retract even if the last saw had still not been taken by the buyer. Now, in the end of that statement, by buying and selling, there was another case given where the person says, I'm selling you, not that I'm selling you a core for shloshim, but I'm selling you every saw for a seller. So over there we say that every saw that's taken by the buyer actually is finalized. That's different. So there it's because that was the deal originally. We said we're having a sale every single saw for a seller. So if you're doing every saw independently, obviously when the buyer takes that saw, that part of the sale is finalized. However, when it comes to the division of property, that's the case of the brothers dividing property. So there we say that it is finalized, and even if a third brother shows up, what they divided is considered finalized, just that each brother gives a certain portion to that third brother. So in that case, it's actually the other way around. They want to quickly divide as much as possible. Everyone wants to take his portion. They don't want to continue to share the property. Everybody wants to be able to deal with his own property. Because it's an expression, if you have a pot with partners, it doesn't get warm and it doesn't get cold, meaning you have too many people handling the property, they're not going to be able to profit at all. That's why over there we say that the judgment, the division does in fact go through, is considered to be final. And the Gemara continues, Itmar, it was stated the following, Machlokas Amoroim, Achin Shecholku, let's say again, brothers divide property, Uba Baal Chov, Venat al Chelko Shalechad Mehen. Let's say a Baal Chov, a creditor, comes along, and he takes one of their properties, so one of the brothers loses all of his property to a creditor. So the question is now, do they have to redivide the property? Rav Amar Batla Machlokas, Rav says the original division is nullified, they should redivide the existing property. Essentially what that means is that the brother with all of the property now has to give up half of the property because they're going to redivide. Ushmuel Amar Viter, but Shmuel says that what was done, and this person who lost, the brother who lost his property, he lost that property. Ravasi Amar, Ravasi says, Notel Ravia Bakarka or Ravia Bamos. He takes a quarter, meaning to say we're not really sure over here whether the brother who has the property right now, whether he has to divide the property or not. So he doesn't give half of his property, he just has to give 1/4 because you have a situation of doubt, so you divide. And Ravasi also says that it's 1/4, he can give either land or he can give money. He doesn't have to give land, he can give money if he wants to. And the Rashbam explains, Ravasi Yamar, Ravasi says, Lo Badla Machlokas, the original division is not batal, it's not nullified. Litol Mechsa Mechelek Achiv Kerav, he's not able to take half of the property from his brother, like Rav said. V'gam Lo Viter Kashmuel, but he also doesn't have to give up on the property, like Shmuel Legamri, he doesn't have to totally give up. It's not like this brother who lost out loses everything. Elanotel Ravia Karka Misada Achiv, rather he takes 1/4 of the land from the field of his brother. Dahainu Chatzi, Chatzio, that's half of the half. O Ravia Yite V'yitain lo achiv mos, or that quarter can be given by the brother not as land, but he can give money instead. Because he can say to him, the reason why he's allowed to give money is because that brother can say, look, if the creditor would have come to me, I would not have given him land. I could have given him money. Because my father's only chayiv to this creditor money. That's what the creditor is coming because of a debt that the father has. So therefore, if I'm paying you, I'm only going to give you money. That's why he has a choice to give land or money. And the Rashbam continues, now we're going to explain the reasoning as we go on. Because Rav Asi is in doubt whether the halach is like Rav, that he has to give up 50% of the property, or is the halacha like Shmuel, that he doesn't have to give up anything. When you have a doubt by money, you divide, and that's why he gives just 1/4, because again, we're not sure if it's a half or nothing, so he gives 1/4, and as the Rashbam explained, again, he can give either land or money. And the Gemara continues and explains, Rav Amar Batla Machlokas. Rav says the original division is nullified, because Rav holds that when brothers divide, they're considered like Yorshin, they're considered to be like heirs, and what that means is they're all responsible. In this case, the two brothers, they're both responsible if any creditors come forward, and that's why if a creditor comes and takes the property from one of the brothers, the other brother is now responsible to give half his property to that brother who the land was taken away from. Ushmuel Amar Viter, and Shmuel says that he's given up, meaning to say the brother who the property was taken away from, that brother loses the property and doesn't get any reimbursement at all. Because Shmuel holds that when brothers divide, they're like buyers, meaning it's like they're buying from one another, they're trading the property from one another. It's also like you're buying with no responsibility taken, meaning one brother does not take responsibility for the other brother. They buy from each other the property, so to speak. Each one takes his particular property, and then whatever happens, if a creditor takes one particular property from a brother, that brother is not allowed or is not able to get reimbursed. And finally, the Gemara says Rav Asi, in terms of Rav Asi, what does he hold? Mesafkale, so he has a doubt. He's not sure if the brothers are considered to be like heirs, and therefore they would all be responsible if any creditors come forward, or are they considered to be like buyers, in which case they are not responsible. If the property gets taken away from one of them, the other brother is not responsible. So therefore, since he is in doubt, Hilkach notel Ravia Bekarka or Ravia Bamos. That's why he takes 1/4, and either that quarter is taken in land or taken in money, as we said. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rapapa says, Hilchasa b'chol hanishmaitza mekamsin. The halach in all of these cases is mekamsin. He takes off a share of his property and gives it away. We'll see the Rashbam in a moment. Ameimar Amar Batla Machlokas. Ameimar says the halach in these cases is that the original division is nullified and we start over the division. V'hilchasa, the halach in fact is Batla Machlokas, that the original division is nullified. And the Rashbam explains, again, Rapapa said, B'chol hanishmaitza mekamsin, in all of these cases, the halach is mekamsin. What that means is, B'shnei achen shecholko, first in the case we had, where two brothers divide, ubolhen ach, and then a third brother shows up. And also, uva achen shecholko uva balchov, and not al chelko shalechon mihen. The case we just had, let's say the brothers divide and a creditor takes the property from one of them. So Rav Papa says the halach in both of these cases is sheyakmitz mechelko v'yitein lozeh chatzi hasada, that the brother who still has the property, or in the situation of the two brothers and the third brother shows up, they have to take from their property and give over the property to the other brother, either the third brother that shows up, or again the brother whose property was taken away. And the point over here is that Rav Papa holds kirav. Rav Papa holds like Rav, the chiyorshin damu, that really the brothers are considered to be like heirs and they're all responsible. Let's say a creditor comes forward, and so therefore he has to give up half of his property. Now, if he has to give up half of his property, isn't that the shita that said batla machlokas, that you should redivide the property? And so now the Rashbam explains, Umiu lo batla machlokas lachzor v'lachlok begorol. Nevertheless, Rav Papa says, even though the brother, in the case of the creditor, has to give up half of his property, we don't say that the original division is nullified, that you're going to go ahead and redivide, drawing new lots with a new gorol. Ella below gorol. Rather, what Rav Papa is saying is you don't do a lottery. Rather, v'yiten lo chatzi asada me'ezet tzad sheyirtza. He just gives him half of his property from whatever side of the property he wants to give. Uvilvad sheyeshaveh ki'idach chetzi. As long as what he's giving him is the same value, that what he's giving him is essentially 50% of the value of the property that he has. And so the point over here is that Rav Papa is holding like Rav, that really we say the brother is responsible to give 50% 50% of his property to the other brother. But the way that we do it is not by starting over the entire division, but rather by mekamsin, and then of course in the first case by the two brothers, and where the third brother shows up. So there we had the psak of Shmuel that we say mekamsin, and Rav Papa is saying mekamsin over there as well. That again, each brother takes some of his property to give to that third brother, so that everybody has 1/3. And the Rashbam continues, v'hilchasa badla machlokas. Again, Ameimar said that the halach in all of these cases it's badla machlokas, that you start over the division. And the Rashbam says, heicha decholku shnayim l'shnei chalokim v'achar kach bolhen ach mimedinis hayam. That would be in both of these cases again. Let's say they divided the property in two, and then a third brother shows up, so we're going to start all over again. Or let's say they divided and a creditor took property from one of them, then also they're going to start over the division. The Rashbam gives a third scenario, inami or ito bechaluka la'achluk beinehen sadash gazal avian. Let's say, for example, they divided up and they made a mistake. They ended up dividing a field that really their father had stolen. Now that's going to be taken away by whoever it was stolen from. So it turns out that one of the brothers really took more property than he should have. So then again, we're going to redivide. That's what it means to say when we say batla machlokas. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Shlosha sheyardu lashim. Let's say three judges, they sit down in order to evaluate how much property of orphans is worth. You have to evaluate the property because some money has to be given to the daughters and to the wife, but the judges disagree in terms of how much the property is worth. Echad omer b'mana, one says that the property is worth a mana is 100 zuz. Ushnayim omer b'masayim, and then the two other judges, they say that it's worth 200 zuz. Or echad omer b'masayim, or let's say the other way around, one of them says it's worth 200 zuz, Ushnayim omer b'mana, and then two of the judges say it's worth 100 zuz. So in this case, you have a majority saying one thing. So batal yachid b'miyuto, so then that individual judge, his view is nullified because he's in the minority. Essentially, you follow the majority opinion. What if you have the three judges, they're all disagreeing? Echad omer b'mana, one says a mana, it's 100 zuz. V'echad omer be'esrim, and one says 20. When we say 20, we mean 20 sloim. 100 zuz is actually 25 sloim. So if you say 20 sloim, that means you're saying 80 zuz. V'echad omer b'shloshim, and one says 30 sloim. If you're saying 30 sloim, that means 120 zuz. So here you have a case where one judge is saying 80, one is saying 100, one is saying 120. So what do we do in such a situation? So that's a machlokas tanoim. The first Tana, the Tanakama says nidon b'mana. We say that you take the middle. You say it's 100 zuz. You had one that said 80, one said 100, one said 120. We go with 100. Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Tzadok, Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Tzadok says nidon betishim, that we actually say it's 90. This will be explained in the Gemara why we say 90. And acherim omrim, others say osin shuma beinehem. We do a valuation between them and mishalshin, and we divide by 3. What that means to say is you take the 80 and the 120. You figure out how much of a difference there is between 80 and 120, which of course is 40. You divide 40 by 3, and whatever that number is, you add it to the 80, and the Gemara will explain this as well. And the Gemara now explains the various opinions. Man damar nidon b'mana, the one who says that we say it's 100 zuz, so milsa mitziasa, again, we just go by the middle view. If you have 80, 100, 120, you pick 100. Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Tzadok, omer nidon b'tishim. Now, Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Tzadok, he says that we assume it's worth 90. Why is that? Because kasavar, because he holds ha'ara, this particular land, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Kuf Zayin Amud Beis.